Why reading is so important for learning English and how it can totally change your life. Hey there, first off, let me ask you, have you ever wondered why people keep saying that reading is so important, especially when you're learning English? I get it. Maybe reading feels like something that older folks do, or maybe you think reading is kind of boring. Or maybe, like one of my friends once said, "Man, I haven't read a book since I was 15. Sound familiar? Trust me, I totally understand. But stick with me because today we're going to dive into why reading is not just important, but also super fun, and how it can help you become fluent in English faster than you think. Reading is more than just words on a page. It's an adventure. Let's start with something simple. Reading is fun. Yep, you heard me right. When you crack open a book, it's like stepping into a new world. You could find yourself flying through the air on a dragon in a magical land, or trying to solve a mystery alongside a clever detective. Books take you places you've never been and let you live experiences you've never had. It's like traveling the world without leaving your couch. For example, have you ever imagined being in space with astronauts, discovering a treasure buried on a pirate island, or even falling in love in Paris? All of this can happen when you read a good story. So why is this important for learning English? Well, when you're having fun, your brain is more relaxed and open to learning. Think about the last time you did something you enjoyed. It was probably easier to focus and remember things, right? That's what happens when you read in English. The language just starts to stick in your head naturally. Improving your communication skills. Speak like a native. Alright, now let's get a bit technical. But not too much, don't worry. When you read a book, you're basically getting a lesson from a pro. You're seeing how the author uses language to describe things, tell stories, and share ideas. Every sentence teaches you something about how English works. Pretty sweet, huh? For example, let's say you're reading a story, and the author describes a sunset. Instead of just saying, "the sun went down," they might say, "the golden sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sleepy town." See the difference? You're not just learning the basics of English, you're picking up on the subtle ways that words can be used to create a picture in your mind. This is important because it helps you become a better speaker and writer. When you read, you're not just learning new words, you're seeing how sentences flow, how ideas connect, and how to express yourself more clearly and naturally. Before you know it, you'll start using these patterns in your own conversations. It's like having a secret weapon in your pocket. Building a strong vocabulary. Say goodbye to forever. One of the biggest perks of reading is that it builds your vocabulary. You know, all those fancy words that make you sound super smart and confident when you speak. Vocabulary is like your toolbox. The more words you have, the easier it is to say exactly what you mean. Imagine this. You're in a conversation and you want to describe something big. You could say, "It's big," but that sounds kind of plain, right? What if instead you said, "It's gigantic," or "It's colossal," or even, "It's enormous"? Boom. Now you're using words that paint a more vivid picture. The more words you know, the more precise you can be in your communication. But here's the thing. Learning new words can feel like a challenge, right? Don't worry. Reading makes it way easier. When you see a word in a book, you're not just memorizing it, you're seeing it in action. You might not know what gigantic means the first time you see it, but if you keep seeing it in different sentences, you'll start to get the idea. Soon, gigantic will be a part of your everyday vocabulary. Context is your best friend. Here's a cool trick. Reading shows you words in context. What does that mean? Well, instead of seeing a random word on a flashcard, which is kind of boring, let's be honest, You're seeing that word in a story or a sentence that makes sense. It's like getting clues to figure out what the word means. Let's go back to gigantic. If you only see that word by itself, you might forget it. But if you read, "The gigantic dragon spread its wings and soared into the sky," you get a better idea of what it means, right? The dragon is huge. Now, when you hear gigantic, you'll remember that image of a massive dragon in your head. Learning words this way sticks better because you're not just memorizing, you're experiencing. Learning synonyms and nuances. Spice up your language. Ever notice how some people just seem to have a way with words? They don't just say something is good. They say it's fantastic, incredible, or out of this world. That's because they've learned how to use synonyms, words that mean the same thing but sound different. When you read, you get exposed to all sorts of fun synonyms. Instead of always saying big, you can mix it up with words like huge, immense, colossal, or towering. Each of these words adds its own little flavor to what you're saying. This is what we call nuance, the slight differences in meaning that give your language more color. For example, saying "I had a good day" is fine, but saying "I had an amazing day" feels way more exciting, doesn't it? By reading, you learn to choose the right word for the right situation, and that makes your speech more interesting to listen to. Guessing the meaning of new words. You've got this. Here's another pro tip. When you come across a word you don't know, you don't always have to stop and look it up. Sometimes you can figure it out just by looking at the other words around it. This is called using context clues, and it's a super helpful skill to have. Let's say you're reading and you see, "The colossal statue towered over the city." You might not know what colossal means, but since the statue is towering over the city, you can guess that colossal probably means something really big. Congrats. You just learned a new word without even needing a dictionary. Being able to guess the meaning of new words is like having a superpower. It keeps you reading smoothly, and before you know it, you're learning tons of new vocabulary without even trying too hard. Grammar through reading. Learn without even realizing it. Grammar can be tricky, right? I mean, who really likes sitting down and memorizing rules about past tense verbs or when to use a or the? But here's the cool part. When you read, you're seeing grammar in action. You don't even have to think about it. For example, when you read sentences like, "She walked to the store," or "He was really happy," you're seeing how past tense verbs are used correctly. Over time, this stuff just starts to make sense, and you find yourself using these grammar rules naturally in your own speech and writing. Reading also helps with those small but important words like an, the, and pronouns like he, she, it. These words are everywhere in English, and the more you see them in books, the easier it is to remember how to use them correctly. Spelling and thinking in English. Let's get fluent. Okay, so English spelling can be a bit of a headache sometimes, especially when words don't sound like they're spelled. Like, seriously, who decided that though, through, and thought should all sound different? But don't stress, reading helps with this too. When you see tricky words spelled out in books over and over, it helps you remember how to spell them correctly. It's like giving your brain a little spelling workout every time you read. Plus, when you read a lot, you start to think in English. You stop translating everything from your native language and just start thinking in English. How cool is that? This is a huge step toward fluency because it makes speaking and writing in English so much easier. Your brain just starts to get used to the patterns and sounds of the language, and before you know it, you're speaking like a pro. Finding joy in stories, beyond just learning English. Here's a secret. Reading isn't just about learning English. It's about discovering new worlds, exploring different cultures, and seeing life from other people's perspectives. When you read stories from different cultures, you learn about new ideas, customs, and ways of thinking. For example, you might read about a traditional Japanese tea ceremony or an African tribal dance. These stories help you understand and appreciate other cultures, and they make you more empathetic and open-minded. So, while you're improving your English, you're also growing as a person. Pretty amazing, right? That's the first part of your essay. Let's keep expanding on these ideas and dive even deeper into the benefits of reading, keeping the tone friendly and relatable. Reading builds confidence. Say goodbye to language anxiety. Now let's talk about something super important, confidence. A lot of people learning English struggle with feeling confident when speaking. Trust me, I've been there with other languages, and it's tough. You're worried about making mistakes, sounding silly, or not finding the right words at the right time. Well, guess what? Reading can help with that. When you read regularly, you naturally start to feel more comfortable with the language. It's like when you practice anything, whether it's playing basketball or learning a new instrument. The more you do it, the better you get, and the more confident you feel. Think of reading as your secret training ground. You're building up your vocabulary, improving your grammar, and learning new ways to express yourself, all without the pressure of speaking in front of others. Then, when it's time to actually have a conversation in English, you've got this huge bank of words and phrases you can pull from. Your confidence will soar because you've already been training behind the scenes. A good way to practice your speaking confidence is by talking about the books you're reading. Share the stories, ideas, or even your opinions about what you've read with friends, classmates, or teachers. The more you talk about what you've learned, the more comfortable you'll get with speaking in English. The power of pronunciation. Reading aloud changes the game. You know what's even better than just reading silently? Reading aloud. Yeah, you heard me right. It might feel a little strange at first, but reading out loud is one of the best ways to practice your pronunciation. Here's why. When you read aloud, you're not only seeing the words, you're also saying them and hearing them. It's like giving your brain a full-on English language workout. You're practicing how to pronounce tricky words and getting used to the natural rhythm of English sentences. For example, have you ever come across words like through, though, and tough? They can be confusing, right? But when you read them out loud, you start to notice the differences in how they sound. The more you do this, the easier it gets, and soon, those weirdly spelled words won't trip you up anymore. Another cool trick is to listen to audiobooks while following along with the text. This way, you can hear how native speakers pronounce words and match your pronunciation to theirs. It's like having a personal English tutor right in your earbuds. Fluency through reading. Smooth talking without the stress. Fluency is one of the biggest goals for anyone learning a language, right? We all want to be able to speak smoothly, without constantly stopping to search for the right word or worrying about making a mistake. And guess what? Reading can help you get there faster. When you read, you're exposed to the natural flow of English, how sentences are put together, how ideas are connected, and how conversations happen in real life. Over time, this helps you get used to the rhythm and structure of the language, which makes it easier to speak more fluidly. Here's a fun idea. Try reading dialogues from books or plays out loud. This will give you a sense of how conversations happen in English. You'll start to get a feel for how people naturally respond to each other, how questions are asked, and how ideas are expressed. And before you know it, you'll be speaking more naturally in your own conversations. Learning idioms and colloquialisms sound like a native rave. Ever heard someone say, "It's raining cats and dogs"? That's an example of an idiom. Something that doesn't literally mean what the words say, but has a special meaning. Idioms and colloquialisms are a huge part of everyday English, especially in casual conversation. So it's important to learn them if you want to sound more like a native speaker. Books are full of these little language gems. When you read, you'll come across idioms and phrases that might not make sense at first, but as you see them in context, you'll start to understand their meanings. For example, if a character in a book says, "I'm feeling under the weather," you can probably guess from the context that they're not feeling well. Learning these expressions through reading helps you pick up on the nuances of English and use them in your own conversations. And trust me, when you start throwing around idioms like break the ice or hit the nail on the head, people will be impressed. Building your listening skills. Audiobooks to the rescue. Let's not forget about listening. A lot of people think reading is all about your eyes, but it can actually help improve your listening skills too, especially when you combine reading with audiobooks. When you listen to audiobooks, you're training your ears to recognize how English sounds in real-life conversations. You'll hear how native speakers use intonation, stress certain words, and connect sentences. Plus, if you follow along with the text while listening, you're getting a double dose of learning, both reading and listening at the same time. This is especially useful for those tricky parts of English where pronunciation doesn't match spelling, like night or wrinkle. Hearing the correct pronunciation while seeing the word on the page makes it easier to remember how to say it when you encounter it later. So, whether you're commuting, exercising, or just chilling at home, audiobooks are a fantastic way to keep improving your English, even when you're not in the mood to sit down and read a traditional book. Exploring new cultures through reading. Open your mind and heart. One of the coolest things about reading is that it's not just about the language. When you read stories from different cultures, you're getting a sneak peek into someone else's world. You get to see how people live, what they value, and how they think about life. It's like traveling without a passport. For example, let's say you pick up a book about life in Japan. You might read about a traditional tea ceremony or how families celebrate New Year's in a totally different way than you're used to. Or maybe you read a story set in Africa and you learn about the beauty and significance of tribal dances. These experiences make you more open-minded and empathetic because you start to see the world from different perspectives. And the best part? You're improving your English while also expanding your worldview. Win-win. Learning emotions and expressing yourself. Books teach you to feel and speak deeply. Books aren't just full of facts and grammar, they're full of feelings. When you read, you get inside the heads of characters, experiencing their emotions, thoughts, and struggles. This is huge for learning how to express your own feelings in English. For example, you might read about a character who feels ecstatic after winning a race, or another character who feels despondent after losing a loved one. These aren't just basic words like happy or sad. They're words that express a deeper, more specific emotion. And the more you read, the more you learn how to describe your own feelings with precision. Let's say you're feeling really happy because you just aced an English test. Instead of saying, "I'm happy," you could say, "I'm over the moon," or "I'm ecstatic." These words make your language more colorful and help you connect with others on a deeper emotional level. Critical thinking and imagination. Reading makes you smarter. No, really. Believe it or not, reading doesn't just improve your language skills. it also makes you a better thinker. When you read, you're constantly analyzing what's happening in the story, thinking about why characters do certain things, and predicting what might happen next. This helps develop your critical thinking skills. For example, if you're reading a mystery novel, you're probably trying to figure out who done it before the detective does. You're piecing together clues, analyzing the characters' motives, and coming up with your own theories. This kind of thinking is great practice for problem solving in real life. Reading also sparks your imagination. When you dive into a good book, you're transported to new worlds, meeting interesting characters, and experiencing things you might never get to in real life. This creativity can spill over into other areas of your life, helping you come up with new ideas, solve problems in innovative ways, and think outside the box. Practical tips for building vocabulary through reading. Now that you're pumped about how awesome reading can be, let's talk about some practical ways to make the most of it. Here are a few tips to help you build your vocabulary and improve your English through reading. 1. Choose books you actually enjoy. This might seem obvious, but it's super important. If you're not interested in what you're reading, you're less likely to stick with it. Whether it's fantasy, romance, sci-fi, or even comics, find something that grabs your attention. 2. Read regularly. Make reading a habit. Even if it's just for 15 to 20 minutes a day, the consistency will make a huge difference over time. 3. Keep a vocabulary journal. Write down new words you come across and their meanings. Try to use those words in your own sentences. This will help reinforce your learning. 4. Use context clues. Before rushing to look up every new word in the dictionary, try to figure out its meaning from the context of the sentence. This helps develop your inferencing skills and makes learning more natural. 5. Read aloud. As we talked about earlier, reading aloud is great for practicing pronunciation. 6. Read aloud. As we talked about earlier, reading aloud is great for practicing pronunciation and fluency. Plus, it makes the reading experience more interactive. 7. Discuss what you read. Talk about the books you're reading with friends, family, or classmates. Sharing your thoughts helps reinforce new vocabulary and improves your understanding of the text. 8. Join a book club. Joining a book club can keep you motivated and provide opportunities to discuss and learn from different perspectives. 9. Mix it up. Don't just stick to one type of book. Read fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and articles. Each type of text will expose you to different vocabulary and writing styles. 10. Practice using new words. Don't just read and forget. Practice. Try using the new words you've learned in your everyday conversations and writing. The more you use them, the more natural they'll feel. By now, you can probably see that reading is a total game changer when it comes to learning English. It helps you build a strong vocabulary, improves your grammar, enhances your pronunciation, and boosts your confidence, all while letting you explore new worlds and ideas. Plus, it's fun. So, what are you waiting for? Pick up a book, dive into a new adventure, and start improving your English today. The more you read, the more you'll learn. And before you know it, you'll be speaking like a native.